So the Central Bank of Nigeria has put a limit on cash withdrawals starting from January 9th. It's saying that individuals can only cannot withdraw more than 100,000 naira. Companies cannot withdraw more than 500,000 naira over the counter. They're also saying that this redesigning of the notes will check inflation, counterfeiting, and corruption. In addition, they're also saying that in ATMs, you wouldn't have more than the 200 naira denominations during withdrawal. They also said that third-party checks above 50,000 naira shall not be eligible for payment over the counter, while the exempt limits of 10,000 naira on clearing checks will still subsist. Now, these are the new policies that CBN recently put out last week, Tuesday. Now, we still need to speak to CBN because we need to understand the reasoning, as I said, inflation, to check inflation and all that, and see how they plan to execute. But this morning, we'll be speaking with a financial and development economy expert, Mr. Tunji Olatunji, who will be giving us some insight into the pros and cons of this new monetary policy. And also, we'll be taking some phone calls and tweets to hear what Nigerians think about this, especially knowing the fact that political parties are complaining that this would definitely inhibit the logistics for the political electoral process. But what are your thoughts on this? How do you think this will work out? What does it even mean for you and I? Would it help us on the long run? You can call us on 081-270-53687, 091-390-76948. You can also tweet to us at TVC Connect. Please hashtag your view TVC so we can read your tweet. So, Mr. Olatunji, good morning, sir. Are you there?
Good morning.
Good to have you on the show. We're so excited for this conversation because we've been trying to have this conversation in a while since last week, but we thought it was important to hear from an expert first before we then bring the conversation to maybe CBN and also Nigerians. But let's hear your thoughts on this new policy. What are your general thoughts on this new policy, and do you think it's going to help us?
Well, starting with the state of the Nigerian economy, this policy, if and when well implemented, would go a long way in the recovery of the Nigerian economy. I remember that sometimes ago, I was on your show, and we were discussing the impact of, the forex on the Nigerian economy and how it's been difficult for the inflation to be checked. And one thing that, I pointed out that time is that the Nigerian economy is largely informal, and therefore most of the monetary policies of the CBN, they have little or no significant impact when they are made. So it makes it appear like some of these policies are not effective. And you say, for instance, the CBN statistics says that 85% of the Nigerian currency is not even with the bank. And so it means if, for instance, the policy is made and it's supposed to have impact on 1 trillion naira of our economy, in natural sense, you only going to impact about 250 billion of that economy, because the other part, which is 85% of your currency, is not even within the control of the financial institutions and the central bank. So going this route is going to be helpful. It is high time we begin to look at issues as destructive criticism. It is high time we get bothered about the state of our Nigerian economy. And we must know that when we take these steps, they are actually going to help to strengthen and help us to recover more. And I will dwell more on the statistics that is available in the public space. Today, going by the NDIC report, not less than 99.4% of bank accounts have less than 500,000. What that simply says is that less than 3% of account holders have above 500,000 in their account.
Are sir?
That is the NDIC report. So it means that bulk of the money in the account belongs to less than 3% of the account holders. If you use the 500,000 account balance as the threshold, and you divide that by the 20 working days you have in a month, then of course you'll be talking of just an average of 25,000 per person if you decide to withdraw on daily basis. If you want to look at the availability of all other withdrawal and payment channels, it means per day, someone with 500,000 cannot even draw more than 16,600 naira from his account on daily basis. And this cashless policy that Nigeria is trying to promote is not new. This started in 2012. In 2012, I was one of the major commercial banks in this country, and I know the uproar at that time when 150,000 became the threshold for withdrawal. Of course, there are going to be issues. People would raise issues, and it started with Lagos, Abuja, and some other 4 or 5 states. But today, what has happened? If you look at the CBN statistics, in the last 9 months, between January and September, what has happened to withdrawal with checks or check transactions in the bank, it has fell. It's not less than 6%. People are no longer really interested in these check transactions. And if you compare check transactions with POS transactions, with ATM transactions, with mobile transactions, with interbank transactions, all of them grew. Of particular interest is the POS transaction, for instance. Nigeria has experienced not less than 24% increase in our POS volume transaction in the last 9 months. That was even before the pronouncement of this policy. In terms of volume, we now have POS transactions that worth 6.1 trillion happened between January and September of this year, compared to 4.1 trillion in the last year. If you look at mobile transfer, it has grew over 100% in the last 9 months. When you look at our interbank transfer, it grew significantly with not less than 50%. But of all, only check transactions are fell because it is no longer attractive to the people. And that is why when we want to extract these policies, we must extract them based on empirical facts and not just mere emotion. I can tell you for free that the implication of this withdrawal limit would not impact the transactions of no less than 70 to 80% of account holders.
Let me get a few more questions.
You don't even get to withdraw it.
Let me get to a few more questions because we have a lot to unpack here. Yeah. Let me come to you.
So, Mr. Olatunji, according to the National President of Association of Mobile Money and Bank Agents in Nigeria, Victor Olojo, this will not impact that group of people favorably. He says that, such a restriction is something that is certainly going to affect the business of POS operators and other bank agents across the country. Do you disagree? And if you do, why?
That position is relative. It will only impact POS owners in view of the limit on transaction that is going to apply. In the last 9 months, the number of POS terminals in the country has grew by over 500,000 and has reached about 1.4 million point of sale across all local governments in the country. How that will impact them is because now, today, as we speak, when you go to a POS terminal, there is literally no limit to the volume of transactions that can take place. So if there is a limit as to what volume can apply on POS in terms of cash transactions, of course, since their revenue or their profit is a function of the volume of transactions they make, it's going to impact that volume. But what are we saying? We are not saying people should no longer transact. What we are simply saying is that the country should now begin to look at how bulk of our transactions will now be devoid of cash, which means you can take your cash to your POS terminal, a POS agent, and instead of demanding for cash, you could actually do the transfer and get it done. I will give you a very simple example that we can relate to. Before now, the trend is that everybody that wants to buy the recharge card will go with vouchers all over the place. Today, vouchers are no longer attractive. People now want to do transfer. And what we are trying to implement in this country, which is long overdue, being the largest economy in Nigeria, is not peculiar to us. In terms of digital transaction of funds, in terms of mobile transaction of all forms, let me say digital transaction, Kenya is leading the pack in Africa, for goodness sake. Kenya. You won't tell me that people in Kenya are more literate. You won't tell me that people in Kenya are quite different. If Kenya can be leading the pack with its mobile wallet, M-Pesa, which has become a globally acclaimed and applauded innovation. Nothing stops Nigeria from making it happen. In the last 10 years, between 2012 that this policy was introduced and now, Nigeria has equally witnessed significant impact on a number of the subsector of our economy. Today, we can talk about POS existing. The question is that if the cashless policy was not even introduced ab initio, would those jobs that POS created would have been there? Will the POS even exist? Before now, to get POS is like you want to get something that is a big deal. But today, we have no less than 1.4 million, like I rightly said. So what we begin to do, and like I said, like I've also advocated at a forum very recently, and I'm happy the CBN governor made the same position. Policies are not meant to be casted in stone.
So, yeah. As I was saying, right.
So for me, really, this new policy, for me, I think is a positive one. I see how it can help with our fight against corruption, but also people have said, so when our guest comes back, if he's able to, I've heard some of the complaints, and I think that they are valid complaints, or fears, and I think that they are valid because we have a large number of Nigerians that they say who do not have BVNs, they do not have accounts. So that's very important that we look into that. What would it mean for people like that? What would it mean for, I guess I talked about an economy being largely informal. And that means that, a lot of people, this informal, they're constantly, their transaction is mostly in cash. What does that mean? So for me, I feel that the infrastructure that we need to put in place to make this policy more effective has to be the first step that we take, because to just say, no, don't withdraw much more than 100,000, where you even have people who, you enter the market today, people will tell you that you spend much more than that. I'm talking of just regular markets, buy yam, buy rice, blah, blah, blah. And then you cannot withdraw much more than 100. No, is it 100,000 for individuals? Yes, 100,000. Weekly, sorry, weekly. So it's 20,000 daily. It just does not make sense.
So for me too, those were my fears. Laudable policy on paper, but do we have the timing, is it the right timing? When the banks, no, because the CBN is a regulatory body. When you issue policies, like, it means that you've checked everything. Customers are constantly having unresolved transactions, unreversed transactions for months on end, and the e-system that you're relying upon is not as perfect as you'd want. It's not even near perfect. It's not near good, talk less of perfect. People are constantly, YK sits here, talks about the millions that she has to forgo after pursuing banks on end. You don't have a proper channel to check this. You can't just limit cash like that, just like that, just because, it's a great policy on paper. Then, if you copy other countries that have done it and said, we must do it here, what is the purchasing power when it comes to the Naira? How much is 20,000 Naira daily?
Yeah, they are saying they didn't use foreign, they used Kenya.
How much is your 20,000 Naira in the market?
So what I think we need to bring in an expert.
One dress
patch. We have to wrap up the show. But that's all we can take on today's show. We'll bring in an expert properly to discuss this important policy that is going to affect you and I. That's all we can take on the show. Stay with us. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.